Hi everyone, I'm Oleksandr Sharlai, and I was the part of Dr. Kristen Smith's lab. So I was very honored and honestly glad to become part of summer 2024 CADRE cohort. I knew that it was pilot program, so I think for me as well from CADRE team, it was very excited, but at the same time, quite terrifying because it's like first of all community college students who got access to some mentors here at that could do science. So I would like to mention that cadre give the opportunity to do real science and to collaborate with real professionals in their field, and it's something that probably I'm the most grateful cadre for. It's like for probably one of the greatest selection of mentors, because even though I mostly work with Dr. Christian Smith, I visited Dr. Sarah, who is in charge of public health lab workshops, and so I also had the experience to speaking with her. I also had experience to speak with Dr. Paula Desplat, who is who is in charge of neuroscience lab. And I can say that besides being very professional and very intelligent and work dedicated and so on, because those mentors are really experts of their field, they were also very supportive and very kind. And even like for example, my principal investigator Dr. Kristen Smith put all her efforts to do that the most in respectful way, and I mean to do like it the most supportive, that do not feel the pressure as the intern, because of course when you've got into the lab environment it can be overwhelming. Another thing that I would like also to mention, beside the mentors, it's like overall access to opportunities. Because even being the part of UCSD Health, first of all, give you the access to endless type of resources such as nature, cells, and so on, which is of course beneficial for me as a student and scientist. But also at the same time, I was very glad to visit, for example, brine slicing. I still remember it was like to see the brine in real life and how they slice that. It was really cool experience, and I took a lot of pictures even there and keep showing anyone, because it's like very interesting to see what you have been studied for, to see it in real life, and to know that your knowledge can have implications. And besides all those endless advantages that I already listed, CADRE was overall a really nice experience for me that helped me to get back into the research. It was my probably the first research experience in the US, so for me it's even quite like sentimental even. But at the same time, there were some problems, and I understand that it was because the program is pilot. So that's why I would love to share my feedback so future cohorts could get that support that I kind of felt that I needed. And first of all, is the program duration. 7 weeks that we were given for the project is not enough, and to be honest, it was the last week I just had to rush all the projects because I needed to finish, and the program also finished more uh, it finished earlier than we expected, which is also kind of contributed to the stress. So it's probably one of my biggest note, and also I kind of expected more support and like more this community moments also from country team, because I kind of felt that all cadre scholars were totally separated. We almost didn't meet each other and so on, even though we both of us, it was our first step in UCSD Health. So I think for the future cohorts, like have bring this unity and make some activities that cadre scholars could do together. For example, discussing different how their projects going and so on would be very beneficial. So my favorite part, probably as I mentioned before, is of course having the access to the professionals in the field, and even being mentored by them is already very valuable. And I think because when you got to the science, you kind of can get lost. So when the person who have been there for quite a while is and also who have like very uh, very prolonged experience in that was probably my favorite part, because I sometimes can get so overwhelmed with all my ideas. So for example, Dr. Kristen Smith was kind of this factor that let me, okay, you should stay on track, you should do this, which is also was also very valuable for me. I think another favorite part for me was doing MRI testing to see how actually it's doing in real life, to see even this machine for the first time and how your brain looks and so on. It's also cool. And it's kind of after that, I was lucky enough to see brain cutting. Happily not the same brain, it was already deceased the person. So yeah, it's probably the favorite part of the program. And another probably thing, it's what I would really like to say thank you, Dr. Smith. It's probably that she did her best to make us really united. I mean, the lab stuff. So it was first time, by the way, with her seeing American baseball, because she took us to see the game, and it was like it was so cool. Even though I still think that baseball is very boring, but even the fact that I could finally experience this very American thing as going together at lab game. And it wasn't not only one activity. We also went like to amazing Chinese restaurant. So I do appreciate how much, and it's really for me one of my favorite part in CADRE program. How Dr. Smith really brought me a little bit this part of community here as being UCSD health employee. So, of course, I've learned some skill set which is applicable to neuropsychological assessment, which is pretty useful, but something that I would definitely like to mention that for me is kind of insights and main takeaways. First of all, science can be very ethical things. So when I didn't really think about this issue, but when it comes to science, sometimes you can get too patient and start treating your participants, which contributes a lot to your experiment, as human subjects, and it just dehumanize them. Just have a look on your data and being so starving of getting that data that you just don't look at the human aspect. Visiting Dr. Sarah's last guild workshops led me to have this perspective that actually science can be so vulnerable, that science really can be the tool of communication between people. And it actually reminded me why I even want to do science, because I want to help people. My another probably takeaway is that success is the game of persistence. So of course, life have like its own falls and ups, and you never have to give up. I know that it sounds kind of banal, but it is true, because you always learn from the failure. So you have always to, besides being persistent, you have to adjust. Even like for example with our project at the lab, since due to lack of time, we just adjusted and the project still ended up being successful. And probably the last lesson is that there is no such thing as time wasted, because no matter what we will do, because for example, I went to neuropsychological assessment and I realized that my heart is lying to, as it also was before, to molecular biology and molecular neuroscience, and I actually got fully supported by Dr. Smith in my decision, and that I share my thoughts and opinion on that. So I realized, and I was like, okay, what I'm doing there. But honestly, I also got like very valuable skill sets, such as even organizing the test assessment to assess your hypotheses, even like how it's actually complex processes. And I just like probably again will always admire scientists, because it's people who really doing a lot, and how it's actually complex, how it sometimes you again want to get biased and of course confirm your hypothesis, but you should be honest with yourself and others. So yeah, for me it's like no time wasted. Even like skills that you think that is not important for you at this moment will be important in the future, and you will, and anyway you're still developing as a person. Well, first of all, I think let's start from the most obvious points. It always looks good on your resume and your cover letter for future employees employers, especially because I'm an employee, especially because you work in such a good and one of the best healthcare system in California, such as UCSD Health. So yeah, of course, like these like little and I would say like document point is really important, especially since the US is very competitive and science, especially here, and it will just like make you outstanding from other employees. But probably another thing, I honestly being here and speaking with medical professionals and people who are actually doing MD PhD program, I realized that I want to come back to medical field, and I realized that besides being neuroscientist, I wanted to MD in psychiatry. So it's something that I think like really um contributed to me and my career's goals in the future, because yeah, I realized how bad I want to go to med school, and I'm sure I will be there.